Hi, everybody. Okay, so this is day 1075, I believe, 1075. And uh, we have lots of new developments. We are in the big leagues. Okay, we're in the big leagues, and we've been there for a while, and that has made the agencies more aware of who we are. They already knew, of course, but they have these standard operating. This is my opinion. They have these standard operating procedures to, in a clever way, in a it's been 1,075 days since Richard disappeared from the barracks of Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. And they have a clever way with their charm school tactics to deny you due process. Okay? They deny you due process. They use the tools and the resources that we have given them, that we have entrusted to them, and they turn it into weapons against us. This is my opinion, and I believe I'm very right on this one. They have 6 ways to Sunday, right? 6 ways. The intelligence community has 6 ways to Sunday to get even with you, to use the tools that we have given them, the resources, the monies that we give them, and they weaponize it, excuse me, against us. And they do it in a charming way. Not always charming, but in our situation, they call you and they say, "Oh, we're going to help you, but are you ready to hear about your son?" Which is code for saying, "We are going to launch a smear campaign on your son. And we've already started, but you're coming in late. So, we're just wanting to tell you, are you ready? Are you ready? You picked a fight with the army." That's what we were being told in their charm school way. "Are you ready to hear about your son?" I was like, absolutely. What is this? What is Allie Payne saying for the general in her PAO situation? What a dirty job. What a dirty job. It's like they're the mob. Absolutely. They're the mob. And these are the very leaders that we have entrusted, that we have given those beautiful uniforms to, with the beautiful stars, the beautiful stripes, with all of the privileges, with all of the benefits. And they act like the mob. "Are you ready to hear about your son?" I'm like, yeah. What does that have to do with finding my son? Just find my son. Here he is, a soldier. I didn't even know he was a whistleblower at the time. And sure, I'm ready to hear about him. But first, why don't you find him? Why don't you bring him out to the light? And the tables have turned, because really what is happening right now is the public ready to hear about what's going on in our military? Is the public ready to hear about what is going on in our intelligence community. Are, is the public ready to hear what's going on in the law enforcement community, especially on Fort Bliss? Is is the public ready to hear what's going on in JAG, in our Department of Justice with judges? And I really want to talk about that today. Um, Before I do that, I wanted to talk about this case that just came out, several cases, but I really wanted to talk about this one. And let's see if I have it pinned down below. It's this young man, um, Rudy Ferris, Farias, who was missing for 8 years, but all the while he has been living with his mother, so we're told. So we are told. All the while. How does that happen? And why do I want to talk about this? There's a couple things. Let me make sure I'm on Facebook. But the allegations in this case is that there's incest. Okay, that the mother was sexually assaulting her son, from what I'm understanding, and that for 8 years she has hid him from the public view while having an incestual relationship with him. Um, that's what I'm hearing. Now, these are allegations. Um, if this is true, we have a major problem, because I'm getting, ever since I told the public what I knew about Leilani Hart's CID complaint, about what was going on in her household, which includes First Lieutenant Dallas Hart, former First Lieutenant Dallas Hart, yeah, he's out now, and having an incestuous relationship while he was serving in the U.S. military right there on Fort Bliss with Richard. And we believe there's very, very good reason. We have um, witness testimony that he was the first lieutenant, the platoon leader for Delta Battery 14380A, so that he was Richard's platoon leader. We have numerous um, testimony on that, not just one. And it would be easy to check if we could just go on to, let's say, Facebook and look at the pictures during that time and see who the platoon leader was, right? If the But we don't have them because you see they've scrubbed Facebook of Delta Battery 143 history. Any picture. And it would be easy to find out if the leadership would just tell us who Richard's platoon leader was. But see, we know who his first sergeants, we know SFC Arona, we know, Rogerio was a first sergeant, and so was Jay Paulin, and we know Captain Park, David Park, and we know Captain Yoshida, and we know on and on, right? On and on. Jackson, Lieutenant Colonel Jackson, and Lieutenant Colonel Roddick, um, and all the way up. We know Major General Clem Coward, Um, and but we don't know who the platoon leader. They never told us who the platoon leader was for Richard. And, that would solve that problem if they would tell us. But see, we are denied due process over and over and over again. And not only that, we are given misdirections. Um, we are being told things that are not quite right. They asked, "Are you ready to hear about your son?" But they didn't tell us he's a whistleblower. He went and reported to Child Protective Services. They didn't tell us that. And that's true. And that's big. That's very big. And they didn't tell us he went and complained to CID. He didn't tell us. They didn't tell us that. They didn't tell us that Tavita Nusa, Special Agent Tavita Nusa in the CID, was being controlled by Leilani Hart. Think about that. So you go to CID to make a complaint, right? And that complaint absolutely has to do with Dallas Hart. And the CID, and this is my opinion, and the CID special agent that is in this very small office, 5 to 9 people. 5 to 9 people. You have 90,000 service members and family right there that call Fort Bliss home, and only 5 to 9 people in the CID office on Fort Bliss. And Richard goes there searching for help, and the special agent, Tavita Nusa, is in an intimate relationship with Leilani Hart. I mean, how many intimate relationships has Leilani Hart have? I mean, I know. Okay, it's none of my business. It's none of my business. I take it back. But wow, the reports are wow, and she's confessing in this CID complaint that she gets the number for, that turns into an FBI complaint, a confession that she gets the number for. So she has some, you know, she has some skills with her connections, okay? Because she's getting FBI number and a CID number for her notarized complaint that she put in to confess that her son is having an incestuous relationship while he's serving in the United States Army right there in Fort Bliss with Richard Halliday. She is using Richard's complaint that, did she get it from Tavita Nusa? Because that's what Prime Witness is leading us to believe, that Tavita Nusa is leaking Richard's file to her. Right? What does she want with Richard's file? And to fortify her complaint about her household, and that includes the sexual assault of a 7-year-old in her master bedroom. I think this is really, really important to get out over and over and over again. That's why I repeat this over and over and over again, for the child's sake, for other children's sake, for the community's sake, for other families' sake. Can you imagine if you're, you have a family there, and you know about the security issues, the lack of security on Fort Bliss, and you have major weapons there, and there's a security issue, and there is, because a 14-year-old girl was living in the barracks being prostituted out. There is a security issue because the barracks are the marketplace for illegal drugs. There is a security issue because um, where's Richard? He goes missing from the barracks room, and there is a cancellation of the protocols, the standard operating procedures in a missing soldier, what to do with a missing soldier. They cancel it, they shut it down, and it's not until family starts trying to rally together to figure out what happened to Richard that the CID are coming in on September 1st, y'all, 2020. And is it a coincidence that when the CID comes in on September 1st, 2020, that's the same day that we receive the screenshots of a defense, of a confession, of a defense, of a cover up, of a smear campaign of First Sergeant Jay Paulin? I mean, who's calling him? Because his good friend is Special Agent Ron Steeg. And the small office, remember, y'all, 5 to 9 people. I mean, there's so much conflict of interest, and we're being told, are you ready to hear about your son? No, I'm ready to hear about the CID conflict of interest that has to do with my son. I'm ready to hear about the denial of due process when it comes to trying to find my son, Richard Halliday, the whistleblower, the Vanessa Guillen first absent soldier. I'm ready to hear about Judge Robert Lee Shook and what he did in our son's case, what he didn't do in our son's case. I'm ready to hear about the level of cover up that happened in the colluding and the conspiracy to sweep Richard, well, really not even sweep him, to smear him so bad, to diminish his character, his whistleblowing character that was calling out the crimes and the child abuse. I mean, when you have a 7-year-old being sexually assaulted in your master bedroom by multiple members of your household, and your son is in an incestuous relationship while he is a platoon leader serving with Richard on Fort Bliss, and you have child porn all over the place, and more than that, there's a security problem, there's an ethical problem, there's a conflict of interest problem. I'm ready to hear about that because it directly relates to my son going missing. And if we expose it, we'll find Richard. We'll find Richard. So this young person, Rudy, who has been missing for 8 years, that the law enforcement, I mean, we have so many agencies, we spend so much of our taxpayers' money to not let something like this happen, and it happens. And another incestuous case. With the reports that I'm getting, the incestuous cases are increasing. That's unacceptable. That is the compounding of evil. That is ruining people's lives. Because with incestuous relationships comes drug use, comes violence, comes and comes a lot of uncomfortable when you're letting that happen and people are watching it happen, and justice is not being done in society, then you have so much stress. Um, and here the taxes go up, adding more stress. Then people have to work. They have to have um, find a way to make ends meet. And they know that there's injustices all around, and then they get tempted by getting into illegal activities, and the crime just culminates. More and more people get hurt. You have child sex trafficking just doubling, tripling, now becoming the number one money maker in crime. These sex cults pop up everywhere. You have the grooming of children then, because you know that they've been given a green light in incest and sex cult and grooming of children. And if you say anything, then you get retaliated against. You get vile and vulgar messages for months at a time, and not a general lifts a finger to help you on that. Not a DA lifts a finger. Not a attorney general lifts a finger. Not Veronica Escobar. She doesn't lift a finger. William Timmons doesn't lift a finger. Lindsey Graham doesn't lift a finger. The JAG doesn't lift a finger. Well, they lift a finger to do you harm. Okay? You have the PAO lifting a finger to do us harm. Are you ready to hear about your son? Um, it's almost a threat, right? If you go to the media, and matter of fact, I took it as a threat, and I told her, look, I want a win-win. I want to find my son, and I want the Army to look good doing it. I want the Army to look good finding my son. Find my son. But no, you see, we have affairs, sexual affairs, sexual affairs, sexual affairs, sexual affairs that culminate into incest, that culminate into child sex trafficking, that culminate into the child pornography, and any pornography is child sex trafficking. Okay, it's the grooming of children into that industry. So one leads to another, one leads to another. And so now we're here. Richard was so removed from all of that growing up because he actually was in a happy household. He actually had a very happy life. He got plenty of hugs that were appropriate. And it's not a terrible thing for him to want that for other children, to want that for other families. And he got there and he said, it's so bad, it's so bad, it's so bad. And he's so young. He's so young. Can you imagine? You're so young and you see things that he saw, and it was so bad. The attitudes, the lack of esprit de corps. Um, That is so bad, y'all. You are in a military and you have no esprit de corps, then you can easily be used to do the um, warring of a foreign and domestic enemy. If you have no esprit de corps trained into you, and Richard's unit did not have any esprit de corps, the first sergeants did not establish esprit de corps. And I say that with confidence because that was the conversations between Richard and my father. Where is this esprit de corps? And we have evidence, even more evidence, to prove that there was an esprit de corps in Delta Battery 143. And that should be absolutely no way, not acceptable. Not acceptable. Not with the very heavy weight of leadership that we have in the military. We have 44 four-star generals and only a tenth of the service members as we had in World War II. And yet they only had 7 four-star generals with 10 times the amount of service members that we have today. And we have 44 four-star generals. Okay, and that's not including the flag officers, the 1-star, the 2-star, the 3-star generals, right? I'm just talking about the 4-star generals. And then I'm not talking about all the NCOs. And my dad held the NCOs accountable. He really did. And with all of that leadership, our volunteer sons and daughters should be taken care of. But we have, this is the reports that I got, right now in Fort Bliss, in the last 7 months, we have 7 suicides. 7 suicides in 7 months. And this is in 2023. This is, can you imagine if Team Find Richard Halliday did not come on all the time? And I know I'm being shadow banned. I know it's been very difficult because media has banned us. I know it's been very difficult. Can you imagine? We could have saved more lives if the media would have helped us. If Bill Hicks, the DA there at Fort Bliss, would help us. If Jaime Esparza, the AG, would help us. If the generals would help us. If William Timmons would help us. If Lindsey Graham would help us. If Veronica Escobar would help us. We would have saved more lives. But I want to say that Team Find Richard Halliday has, I think, has really saved some lives by shedding a light on Fort Bliss. I can't even imagine how bad it would be. Would it be 7-year-olds living in the barracks being prostituted out? Like every barracks would have their mascot child prostitute if we didn't shed light on what's going on at Fort Bliss? Because there's a security problem. There's a security problem, and there's a morality problem on Fort Bliss. And there's a leadership problem in the United States Army. And it's causing 7 suicides in 7 months. It's causing a 14-year-old to be prostituted out in the barracks while living in the barracks. Can you imagine? Can you imagine her nights? Can you imagine her nights? I wonder how tight she held on to her teddy bear or whatever she used to comfort herself. I can't even imagine her nights in the barracks. There's a security breach. And this is not just an apartment complex. This is a United States Army installation with very valuable and dangerous weapons and ammunition. This is a United States Army installation with our volunteer sons and daughters entrusted to these leaders. They have an obligation to protect them, to mentor them, to find them, to have their six, not conduct a smear campaign on them when they're missing and they can't even speak for themselves. And we have a Department of Justice problem. We have a JAG problem. We have a denial of due process in fine Richard Halliday. We have Judge Robert Schuck not answering our inquiries. We have the Legal Assistance Office getting offended when we say, hey, do you know anything about being illegally searched? Did you participate in that? Do you have any knowledge of that? What about denying our prime witness from entering Fort Bliss? Do you know anything about that? And they get offended because we want due process. They get offended when we want our rights. This is a United States Army judge. This is a United States Army attorney. Well, this a civilian attorney that is contracted by the United States Army, right? The United States DOD or whoever is contracting him out to work there for us, the family of a missing soldier. But because it's we want to do our own FOIAs. Oh, I can do a FOIA for you, right? I can do a FOIA for you. Yeah. Would he even submit it? That's how devious I think this all has gotten. But Rob did his own FOIAs, thank God. This is such a denial of what America stands for, what the United States Army is supposed to protect and defend. And we need to let them know that. We need to let them know. We need to write letters. Because how many of you want your children to be groomed into these sex cults? How many want, more and more children to have to live in the barracks to service a military that's morals have gone awry, right? They've gone down the drain. There's no esprit de corps. They don't even know what they're fighting for anymore. In my opinion. And I'm not talking about all of the soldiers. I'm talking about the leadership, because they are obviously treasonous. They are obviously serving foreign and domestic enemies. We should have Richard by now. There should have been such a rally to find Richard, to give us due process. We shouldn't be left guessing if the leads that gave us the three autopsies that say that the remains, the partial remains, the fragmented remains that were recovered were Richard. We shouldn't be left guessing about that, worrying about that. We shouldn't be wondering why they don't tell us if Dallas Hart was Richard's platoon leader. What's so hard about that? Why don't they tell us? Okay, I don't want no third party telling me. I want General Eisenhower, Major General Eisenhower, before that, Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe or General McConville. General McConville is such a big criminal. He committed crimes against humanity over and over again. The man needs to be arrested or at least investigated and stripped of our uniform and our stars and whatever awards that were given. He has used us badly and used his power badly. And the same thing with Christine Warmoth. Who is this? It's like McConville and Warmouth. Who are these people? God has a sense of humor. Or God has a sense of telling us, warning us. But they should have been all over this instead of colluding and conspiring to smear Richard and to mislead us, misdirect us. And here we are, 1,000, and deny us due process. Because as they kick the can down, it gets more and more difficult. As they spread this out longer and longer, it gets more difficult. And they know that. And that's their standard operating procedure to cover up their criminal acts. And using our volunteer sons and daughters to commit those acts and extorting from them. Extorting. It was Command Sergeant Major Jake Jakovitz that said, we brought in the girls during the COVID. We brought in the girls during the COVID because the morale was so low. Was one of those girls one of the 14-year-old that lived in the barracks? Is that who they brought in? I want to see the records. I want to see the records if they carded them and each of them were 21 years old, because they better be 21 years old, because if they're bringing them in for the party and the party absolutely has alcohol and they take underage drinking seriously. No, they don't. That was such an insult. It was such an insult. Okay, so I have some things to tell you that I'm just learning, and I know it kind of goes into this Jag situation, but let me make sure that I'm on Facebook. I should have done that at the very, very beginning, and I'm a little spicy today because of finding out that there's seven suicides in 7 months. Wow. Yeah. Okay, so I'm on. Thank you, Danielle, for coming on. Thank you so much. So, I just want to say that a judge, Eduardo Gamboa, Judge Eduardo Gamboa, he has recused himself because the FBI is investigating him. Okay. Um, this was on abuse of power. And um, there was an attorney that blew the whistle of this abuse of power by the judge, Judge Eduardo Gamboa. And this is just what I'm getting reported. And it's interesting that the FBI has opened an investigation against him. For abuse of power. Um, in this case, the FBI number was not released, like every other FBI investigation. So that Leilani Hart, that she had her FBI number, that is very interesting. Who did she know? Was it Tavita Nusa that got the FBI number? That gave her her CID number? Was it somebody else? Because we have this conflict of interest with Jay Paulin too, with Ron Steeg. You know, this is just a small group, and you know, when you have senior NCOs involved in this, and past service time with people, um, you know, you have to look at the possibilities on that. What that tells you is that judges um, do get corrupt, and so maybe someone can tell me more with that information, what that means for Richard's case. I'm just putting it together, just finding out that information. And I already know that the Department of Justice, because very early on when we were still in El Paso, we asked the Department of Justice, we paid them money, I think it was $500, to have oversight of the CID and the FBI in this case. And they said no. They denied us. Um, which, okay. Uh, it's okay. It's okay because that's evidence, just like Veronica Escobar. Our communication with her is evidence, and just like our communication with the DA, Bill Hicks, is evidence, just like our communication with Esparza, um, Jaime Esparza, is evidence, just like our communication with the JAG, the Judge Robert Lee Shook, is evidence, and also with the legal assistance is evidence. You know, so all of this is clearly, and we have more, that's just the tip of the iceberg, um, shows that we have been denied due process, that we have been misled, that we have been misinformed. He was a whistleblower, and they didn't even tell us. They were not interested in protecting the children. They were not interested in protecting the young mothers. They were not interested in getting justice on Fort Bliss. They, in this case, it's my opinion, they were interested in keeping the criminal activity going. And that's why when you're keeping the criminal activity going, you have something like a young man living 8 years in an incestual relationship, being sexually abused by his mother. This is the allegation. And another thing that happened at Fort Leonard Wood is a soldier was convicted of murder because he killed a 2-year-old that was being cared for in his house. His house was a daycare, and on post, on post, and he killed the 2-year-old. Was that also a soldier's child? Um, so you see, this all has to do with Richard because Richard was trying to restrain it, at least trying to restrain all the crimes being committed, and he was retaliated against severely and continuously. That culminated in his murder. And they didn't stop there. I believe that he was dismembered and placed in different locations. And it's so horrible to think about this whole thing, that the U.S. Army, instead of bringing it out in the open and getting justice, holding accountable those who have done this, they decided to cover it up and blame everything on the victim. They decided to blame everything on the victim. That's our military? That's our Department of Justice? That's our DA? That's our AG? That's our representatives, Vanity Fair Veronica and Vanity Fair William Timmons? I mean, those two, they need to get together. Those two are two peas in a pod. Maybe they have gotten together um, while they're in Congress together. They're up to no good. And, you know, I'm being very nice about this, and um, I'm trying to warn everybody. Do not vote for them. And what about our military? It's not as simple as vote or not vote, right? And it houses and it employs and it is um, entrusted with our volunteer sons and daughters. We call them our most valuable assets. And they are getting trained to suicide, y'all. 7 suicides in 7 months. And there's a security issue because, look, you got guys coming in, and the next thing they know, they have a 14-year-old girl living in their barracks, being prostituted out, being raped continuously. Can you imagine her nights? In the barracks, living in the barracks. Can you imagine her nights? She's not just cuddly and let to sleep. The the barracks are the marketplace for illegal drugs, y'all. The market the barracks were flush with weapons. Flush with weapons. And you have 17 to 25-year-old men, for the most part, men, at their fullest vim and vigor. And you have a 14-year-old girl. Where are the women? Where are the women screaming for the protection of our young girls? Because there's more to this case than what I'm at liberty to say publicly. So the main point is that there's a security issue, and we have intelligence. Not only do we have weapons and ammunition and equipment, technology, but we have intel. We have Epic. And if there's no security, how can we have such sensitive intel on our installation and provide no security? We have sensitive information in the White House. We have the nuclear football, so to say. You know, I have an opinion on the nuclear stuff, but um, let's just say we have sensitive intel in the White House, and yet we have no security because there's cocaine. There's cocaine in the White House, dusting up our home, dusting up our furniture. What's going on? Where's the security? And Epic absolutely can tell where Richard is. They have the technology. If I can trace those vile and vulgar numbers and I trace them, If I can do that, if Team Find Richard Halliday can do that, and these are burner phones, and we were able to trace them, then Epic with their 6 Ways to Sunday can find Richard. Oh, yeah. So General Eisenhower um, can't tell us to go anywhere because everything has been exhausted and found wanting. Um, there's no there's no going to CID. They're compromised. CID Fort Bliss, CID Quantico. There's no going to FBI man. There's no going to Veronica Escobar. There's no going to the DA or to the governor or to the AG or to JAG. So, where would the general have us to go to kick the can to a different agency or to someone? I mean, isn't he responsible for Fort Bliss? Isn't he responsible for our most valuable assets? I know he inherited this mess from the criminal Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe, please God. Fort Cavazos, Fort Hood. Pray for them. That's a mess. And let me tell you, I have no confidence at all in Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe. Matter of fact, I feel like he's implicated in this. He's implicated in this, and he committed crimes against humanity. I saw it for myself. Veronica Escobar is just for herself. She does nothing unless it will further her career. Absolutely, and I have I have a lot of information about her relationship with fine Richard Halliday, and it's all not good. None of it's good. Another missing soldier. When did this happen? Richard's been missing since July 23rd, 2020. 1,075 days. Um, we have been doing this. You can look up, find Richard Halliday. You can go to YouTube. You can go to Facebook. Some of the stuff has been removed, But I'm sure there's probably 3,000 videos out there by now, close to it, of us fighting to get due process into finding out what happened to our son, who is the first Vanessa Guillen absent soldier, and also distinguished honor graduate from basic training and AIT, and also whistleblower, retaliated against severely and continuously. And now we get the archive back of his file, and they've scrubbed it of his Phil Grade Article 15 that they gave him for no reason at all. They scrubbed it. Why did they do that? They scrubbed his chaptering because they had no grounds at all. At all. And they scrubbed it. And not only did they do that, they promoted Richard. They promoted Richard in December, not once, but twice. December 2022. And then again, and he's in cold case, okay? This is him in cold case. And they scrub the retaliation from his file and promote him twice. In December 22 and then 4 months later in April of 2023. Why? Why did they do this? Well, we're wondering. We're thinking that they're getting ready for a congressional inquiry. They have to protect themselves for what they did to Richard, for what they did to us. They searched our home with an assault team from the Fugitive Apprehension Unit out of the sheriff's office without a warrant to intimidate. I mean, the Fugitive Apprehension deputy was 6'8", 6'8" in full battle gear. Yeah. No warrant. Where's the warrant? And more important than that is, where is the probable cause? Because we absolutely know that they had no probable cause. None. Richard was a yellow Interpol. So there's no probable cause. You see, if he was a danger to anybody, if he was a fugitive, if he was a criminal, he would be a red Interpol. But they put him in there as a yellow Interpol, which means missing. And then we received feedback that it was died while missing. So what were they looking for? His remains? They were looking for his remains. Well, we know that Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe were looking for remains there at Training Area 244, known as the Afghanistan Mock Village on Fort Bliss. At Christmas time, he was looking for Richard's remains, Christmas 2020. And then we have, when we were there in October of 2020, we get a phone call. We go to the Dollar General, and FBI man comes in and says that the cashier can take down the flyers of Richard from the door because the FBI has found Richard and he's dead. Shh. Shh. We give this CCTV footage from the Dollar General to the FBI. We give it to the CID. We take a video of the cashier testimony of what happened less than an hour after it happened, and we give that to the CID and the FBI, and they tell us he's just some guy, don't worry about it, it's nothing. That is obstruction of justice. That is a denial of due process, because we did not let it go. We searched for him. Of course, it was 2020, so everyone's wearing a mask. We searched. We did find him. He did admit to everything. And guess what? He was and is the father-in-law of Lieutenant Colonel Bugado in the G3 of the 32nd ADCOM, Richard's G3, which is operations. Richard's command unit, that is operations. They are the wedding planners. Nothing happens without them. Nothing. And they told us he was just a nobody. So we asked for everybody to write a letter to Major General Eisenhower asking him to give Fine Richard Halliday due process. Stop denying due process. Open up an independent investigation into Fine Richard Halliday right now. Right now. Because if Major General Eisenhower wants to, with his level of security clearance, with his tools that are at his fingertips, with his resources that we've entrusted him with, he could find Richard, what happened to Richard, in 24 hours. But you see, this is if Richard is found dismembered in Mexico in uniform, as Dollar General, the FBI man, stated, we have a mess. We have a mess. And don't forget, Richard went missing after 3 beheadings. Vanessa Guillen was beheaded, Enrique Roman Martinez was beheaded, and Austin Hogg was just about, they had to hold his head on when they went to go pick him up in the barracks. And you're telling me that there was no urgency and that there is a denial of due process in Richard Halliday's case when he is the Vanessa Guillen first absent soldier under the new protocols, and yet they're not following them? They don't care. They have to cover up. He's in cold case and he's not a cold case. And we have the head of security on Fort Bliss stating that it was the JAG that blocked our prime witness from entering Fort Bliss because he is a judicial officer. How many cases do you know have a judicial officer as a key witness? Because they can go on base and they can question. They could go to Judge Shook. They could go to the general. And they didn't want that. That's a denial of due process. It's an obstruction of justice. It's tampering with witnesses. And it is really a breach of duty. It's very harmful to esprit de corps. If they cared about esprit de corps, they would never conduct themselves the way they have. So, we need letters. We need letters to Major General Eisenhower, the commanding general of Fort Bliss. And because he will not do anything. There's so much retaliation. He is so afraid of his own retaliation because he wants to make that third star, you see. Our third star. Our. Because we're the ones that pay for that third star. We're the ones that give him the benefits. We're the ones that give him the power. He wants it. And he wants it by doing us harm. Unless we tell him that we have his 6. Unless we tell him, look, we're not going to betray you. You need to do what's right. And we know that you're going to be retaliated against for it. But you're not alone. We're going to have your six and we're going to fight for you. And I think this is a message that we need to send to this general. Because on his own, they have left him nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. I mean, do you think it was a coincidence that General McConville was there on Fort Bliss? Yeah. I'm in El Paso. Thank you so much. Is there any flyers I can pass out? You can write letters. You can write letters to Major General Eisenhower on Fort Bliss. Absolutely. That's what you can do. And flyers, I think that's a good point. Yvette, thank you so much. Maybe I need to put a flyer together to ask for people to write letters to Major General Eisenhower. Yeah. Thank you, Donna. Thank you so much. What's the general's name? The general's name is Major General James Eisenhower with an I, not with an E. Eisenhower. So maybe I should put together a flyer with a letter, a community letter to write him. I'll do that. I will absolutely do that. But really, I did do one, didn't I? Where we've done so much. I did do one for him with the address on it. Let's see, where is it? Does someone have that quick? I did do one. Let's see. And we can put it up there. And all you need to do is write, find Richard Halliday, grant the family due process, right? Let's see if I can search for it. Let's see. Here it is. I think I found it. There it is. Okay. I found it and I'm sharing it. Share. Let's see. And if I go here, I'm sure it's going to be on mine. It's so funny how all this sharing, yep, there it is. Yep. So I'm going to share that now. I can share it to the page. It's so weird how I have to do this. And here's the letter. Here is the letter to Major General Eisenhower. I'm doing it right now. Share. And there's like a postcard. You can kind of print it out. You can write in it. You can print out the letter if you want. Write it how you want, and then tape it together and put it, put a stamp on it and put it in the Did it did it post? This is the thing. I just got a message, a weird message. There it is. Yeah, it did. It posted. Okay. Okay, so if you can share that, that would be great. And the letters are very important at this time because we do have now an alliance. I call it an alliance of the law enforcement security that is on Fort Bliss from within Fort Bliss that you know, are very unhappy with how a few people can take over um, and destroy the security on Fort Bliss. You have Leilani Hart inserting herself in the CID in a way that she could affect the security of CID, leaking files, getting her CID number, her FBI number, um, and having so much power that she gets all kinds of coverage, right? I mean, she did not report the 7-year old being sexually assaulted in her master bedroom by multiple members of her family for she let almost 2 years go by. So, and that's in her confession. That's not me. That is not me. Her son committing incest, that's not me. That is her saying it. Okay? That's her confession. The sexual assault on the 7-year old, that's her confession. We have the CID FBI numbers, which we shouldn't have, but they're leaked. They're out there. How did she get them? How did they get leaked? Why was there a breach? And then, and I don't mention it as much as I should, but the child pornography. Is that like a job for them? I don't know. Because they were running a child care in their home, the Hart family. And was Dallas Hart, because there's this like denial, and then we have people saying, oh yeah, he was Delta Battery's platoon leader. He was Richard's platoon leader. So why doesn't the military clarify that? And who was Richard's platoon leader? Where is Richard's platoon leader? Where is he? All he has to do is say, hey, Dallas Hart wasn't the platoon leader. I was a platoon leader. I mean, what's the big deal? I'm ready to hear about my son. I'm ready to hear. I'm ready to hear who his platoon leader is. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for coming on, Danielle and Yvette, and I hope I say this, Abel, Rebecca, and Donna, and Cindy. Thank you so much, and God bless you. And I will be back tomorrow, God willing.